If the
Yeah.
Fed has to expand the balance sheet to back to $7.5, $8 trillion, well, then gold has to go to $15,000 or $18,000 as opposed to 12 or 10 or $12,000.
Welcome back to Metals and Miners. I'm your host, Gary Bohm. Today, we have a very important discussion lined up with Tom Luongo, founder of Gold, Goats, and Guns. Tom, it's an honor to have you back on Metals and Miners. Welcome to the show.
The honor is all mine, Gary. Thank you for the invite. Anybody who actually wants to listen to this guy talk at this point, seriously. Okay, well, let's get going.
All right, let's get going.
it.
Tom, you come from an Austrian economics type of background with decades of analysis on the markets and geopolitics. Today, we're really in an incredible time. We were just chatting about a few things right before we started taping here and recording. But it's leaving many in a state of shock, concern, and in awe of what's going on. There's so much to discuss today, but before we do, what do you hope for those tuning into this conversation that they're going to walk away with after listening to it?
That things are actually safer and more dangerous than they think they are. Some things are actually happening that need to happen and are going to be a very long-term good thing if even 75% of it works out. There are tail risks. The tail risks are going to create short-term, I think, a lot of short-term tail risks that are going to have people in their, processing things through their reaction engine, their fight or flight response. I think a lot of people are in fight or flight right now. And those that can take a deep breath, step back, and look at the greater strategic picture of things, I think you're going to look around and go, wow, I didn't expect it to be this easy, honestly. And in order to gain that kind of perspective, you've got to, see the world from a lens that most people just don't want to admit exists. And that is that Donald Trump and company are taking on the biggest fight of all, which is to end the multi-century tentacle mess that is what's left of the British Empire, which still exists, which is still out there pulling strings, which is still out there doing its thing, still activated, and still has so many not little, they have major choke points and that are being attacked directly, while at the same time we're being inundated by people commenting on this that, frankly, one, either are gaslit into believing something that's not true or actively on their payroll. And the hard part is that so many of those people, in many ways, they had a framework, they had a thing. It worked for a while. It certainly worked when the United States was working with London to take over the world. That ain't the case anymore. If that were the case, why do you think they tried to kill Donald Trump a couple of times? Why do you think they tried to put him in jail?
So parsing, what we're seeing and what we're experiencing and what we're receiving in terms of narrative and propaganda and everything, and trying to come to a more stable and realistic conclusion to what's really going on, and walking away with the idea that, hey, it's not all as bad as it's appearing. So, all right. So, Tom, the key flashpoint right now is obviously the war in Iran. So let's start there. What's your assessment of where things are right now with the war?
Everything is going better than anybody thought it would. That includes the people in the Pentagon. Okay. And I can see that. And I know that's a controversial statement. And I know there's a lot of people out there who say otherwise and blah, 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 blah. You're wrong. I'm just going to flat out tell you you're wrong. Operationally, what we're doing to Iran is what we've done to Iran, and is devastating. We came in with more than twice what we walked into Iraq with during Desert Storm. Okay. Iran had every opportunity to negotiate out of this. Now I'm going to back up for a second. I'm going to try to explain the nuance here. And I should also maintain that we're not talking about Iran, the country. We are talking about the Islamic Republic of Iran and the IRGC, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Now, let's start with the basics. Those two things are not the same thing. The theocratic layer on top of the Iranian state is one thing. The IRGC is something else. The civilian military is something else. The civilian government itself is something else. And I've been trying to make this argument about Iran now for close to a year. We can't look at Iran as a monolith. We have to look at it as at least these four factions, and there are many others, because then we start drilling down into the regional differences between peoples and blah, 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 blah. It's just like the United States. Do you think that the politics of Idaho are the same as Massachusetts? Really, no, right? Outsiders don't know anything. Really, they think they know, but they don't anything about what actually goes on.
That's why we're a representative government, right?
Right.
We're supposed to.
Well, I mean, it's even just deeper than that. You have the factions within the Senate. You have the factions within the House of Representatives. You have the left coast and their politics. You have the right. You have Texas. You have Florida. It's a patchwork, folks. It's a big country with a lot of different people and a lot of overlapping agendas. Okay, but the leadership sets the agenda. So now let's break down the difference between the people who are actually negotiating with Trump over the nuclear program and everything else, and the IRGC. Now, one of the things I just got done doing a podcast for my podcast with General Blaine Holt about this very thing, and Blaine brought up a great point where he said, "Look, I think the United States and Iran were trying to negotiate in the best, at least the leadership, the clerics themselves. So Khamenei and the clerics wanted one thing. The leadership who were actually doing the negotiating couldn't negotiate honestly, because the IRGC was standing behind them going, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, we're going to kill you. And then we're not going to kill you, we'll kill your family, we'll kill everybody else." Look at the way Iran negotiated, and then look at Zelensky in Ukraine, and you'll see the same pattern. Zelensky can't negotiate honestly because London's standing behind him, France is standing behind him. All the evil bastards in the Ukrainian are surrounding him. The security apparatus surrounding him won't let him negotiate properly. They're all working for external forces. When you see somebody negotiating against their best interests, that's because somebody's standing behind them with a gun to their head. Okay, so this is why I can, and the more I think about it, the more this is probably true, that the clerics weren't lying when they said we're issuing a fatwa against nuclear weapons, and the IRGC was pursuing a nuclear weapon. Those two things can be operative, and they're not mutually exclusive. It just means that they represent two radically different factions within a particular government. And when Steve Witkoff came out the other night on Fox News and said, I know this is we're getting into the weeds, but it's important that I set the stage. When he came out and he said, "Look, they walked into negotiations and said we have enough, 60% uranium to build 11 nuclear weapons. Let's negotiate." Witkoff's answer was pretty much, Trump, it's go time. Okay, because if you look at everything else Trump is doing, attacking the cartels in Mexico, all the deportations, going after the Somali Leering Center mafia up in Minnesota, Venezuela, all of this stuff, and then the gold and silver markets and the attacks on the LBMA through gold and silver markets, thanks to Scott Bessent. When you look at all of that, and then you think Iran, and what's Iran's big weapon? It's not the thousands of ballistic missiles they have. It's their threat to shut the Strait of Hormuz. That's their sanction option. That's their nuclear option. And me personally, I think that the IRGC at the last moment, because all of that pressure points to London and Trump's war with London over control of the pricing of strategic assets around the world, gold, silver, copper, aluminum, oil, this, that, all of this stuff is all still the pricing control of that and the flow control of that from a money perspective, also runs through London. It's all backed by Lloyd's of London and all the shipping insurance companies and all the clearing houses and the Bar Association, the Chamber of Commerce in the United States, and all that stuff. That's all British, okay? Every bit of it. It's not Israeli. It's not French. It's not Italian. It's not Russian. It's not Chinese. It's British. So your conclusion is, and this has been my conclusion for over a year, or at least if not longer, which is that the IRGC is nothing more than Britain's devil's legions inside Iran. And I think that with Trump putting full court pressure all around their illicit funding layer, that the organized crime layer, the child trafficking, the fentanyl, the this, the that, all of this stuff, the oil being sold outside of normal markets, all of that stuff. That's funding all of the global chaos. The global chaos gets insured through Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London makes an awful lot of money, while the U.S. Navy has to bear all the risks, guaranteeing global shipping. So take that away. Now they are under actual existential threat. Add in the blowback from the Epstein files on Prince Andrew, Peter Mandelson, and everybody else, and you start to see the picture emerge that at some point, Trump says, I'm pushing all in on Iran. I moved 2 full carrier groups in. I put a radar blanket over the entire freaking region. Ain't no false flag happening here, boys. You're not sinking one of our ships and we not know about it. Okay? We're going to bring it all in. We're going to bring all the Star Wars weapons in. We're going to bring it all in, and we're going to negotiate the same way he negotiated with Maduro over in Venezuela. Now, in Venezuela, Maduro took the deal. Once Trump could guarantee Maduro's safety, he moved the special forces in, wiped out the Cuban security forces and everybody else that was there holding Maduro hostage, for lack of a better term. Went in, 3 hours, went in, got him, brought him out, exfiltrated him with the USB keys and all the information about the stolen 2020 election and the ledgers and the financial ledgers and everything else. Maduro's out. Maduro's a happy guy. He's alive. His wife is alive. His family's alive, right? The mullahs didn't get that option. They didn't get that option. The IRGC said, no, we're going to war. They chose to go to war. And Trump said, okay, great, we're going to war. And now it's just time to wipe them out because there's no negotiating with these people. And it's a sad thing. They had a choice. That choice was put in front of them, and they chose poorly.
All right, so we're gonna move through this a few more pieces here of the war. What do you expect in terms of energy constriction and prices due to the uncertainties of ships being attacked in the Straits? Of course, it's an effective closure. It's not a hard closure by them, but they're all on the outskirts when you look at the maps. So, there's been attacks on infrastructure in Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. What do we've seen oil go from mid 60s maybe to about 80 today over the last few days. LNG spiked hard the other day.
We have a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, but we're not finished with the setup yet. So let's not go too far ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you're pointing in the right direction, Gary. I hate to interrupt you, but
no.
There's a couple other things to finish here. So Iran chose poorly, and then we find out that they really don't have. They have a lot, but I want everybody to understand. They fired 800 missiles and rockets on Friday, 400, 250. They're done. This war is over. Okay, we're flying B-52s over Iran. We're flying 1950s airframes in, and we flew them in from Kansas. Okay, we didn't just bring them in from Diego Garcia or whatever. We flew them halfway around the world. They wanted to flex at us that they've got 60 pounds of 60% uranium. Great. We have the B-52, and we own your skies, and we own the air, and we own the water, and we own this, and we own that, and we sunk your Navy, and we killed your Air Force. What Air Force? I remind everybody, and I need to make this abundantly clear before anybody starts getting, Tom's just, no, dude, I want you to understand that 3, and I mean 3, no more than 3, F-22s or F-35s, F-35s can kill the entire Iranian Air Force. Okay? That's how many planes they have. 8 targets simultaneously with radar overlap and everything else. They can target eight planes simultaneously, and there ain't nothing any of those old, F-14 Tomcats are going to do about it, or F-4s or F-14s. Nothing. As a matter of fact, the joke that we were running with all weekend was, oh, don't kill all the F-14s. Let's capture them and bring them home and put them in museums. These are important Americana here. We're they should go to the Smithsonian. These airplanes, we should claim them back. Like, that's how unbelievably outclassed they are in every single way. And everything you've heard about the fast attack boats and this, that, and all of it, it's every bit of it is a lie. And it's been a lie promulgated for the purpose of creating this insanity that was always backed up by this threat. It was always backed up by what? As you put it, the effective closure of the straits by having all of the London-based insurance companies go, oh, I don't think this is, a very good, we can't bring our ships into, and then cancel all the contracts. So Trump turns around, and the master stroke, Trump knew exactly what they were going to do. He turns right around and uses the Defense Finance Corporation to start issuing, we'll insure the ships. And, oh, by the way, since the U.S. Navy is already the guarantor of global shipping anyway, because we have been since the end of World War II, but London's the one that's been cashing the premium checks, not us. Hey, how about we get paid for that? Why don't we pay for the war with the insurance premiums, which is exactly what he's taking. He's going to take that from them too. And I'm telling you, that is the most consequential decision of the entire war so far. And everything else is downstream of it, because there was never any, and I mean any, 0% chance that Iran would ever materially hurt us. Yeah, they might get a radar station. Yeah, they might do what they're doing, which is to spastically blow up oil infrastructure around the Persian Gulf. I agree. And they attacked the Gulf Cooperation Council countries that you just mentioned.
Are you expecting prices to stay elevated? Yes. To stay elevated? I mean, looking at the oil chart, it gapped up a few days ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, it makes you wonder if it's going to come back down and fill that gap at some point.
I mean, technically speaking, yes, it all depends on how this plays out. Look, I'm not saying there aren't tail risks. Nothing worth achieving in the long run is worth achieving without a little bit of blood, work, all the rest of it.
All right,
I'm not saying that. So to your point, yes, they knocked out Qatar's LNG, right? Okay, great. You know who that hurts the most?
Yeah, I mean, it's Europe. It's definitely not the United States.
Bingo. As a matter of fact, I was asked by RT the other day when I was on with them. It's like, well, so given that, does the United States have the capability of supplying Europe with that LNG? I'm like, why would you think that the United States would give that LNG to Europe when Japan is in the same boat? And Japan's our ally. South Korea is our ally. Europe's not our ally. Europe is condemning us for this. Europe has been exposed as our enemy. Okay, and I think everybody needs to understand that has been the big tear here. And so, yeah, our energy price is going to go up for a little while. Yes, 30 to 60 days, even 60 days, possible. Things are going to be taken offline for a little while, but Iran is done. And is that worth? Let me ask everybody in the audience, very hypothetical question. Would you take $3.50 gasoline here in, where I am in rural Tennessee, which is up $1 a gallon over what I'm paying currently, to take the threat of Iran getting a nuclear weapon and off the board permanently, and ending the IRGC's nuclear blackmail of the world through the City of London? Would you take that? I would. I don't know. What is that going to cost me this month? $50? Hey, yeah, I'm willing to throw an extra $50 in the kitty, or $300 in the kitty this month to bail out, to help 6 other families get through that.
Yeah, so
that seems reasonable to me.
Everybody who's listening, go ahead and make comment right now below on Tom's question. I think that's a great question. All right, Tom, let's move a little bit more here. The incredible superiority that the U.S. has shown that you've laid out already, mm-hmm. the statistics that the generals have put forth about, day 1, this many missiles were fired, day 2, day 3, day 4. And, they were pointing to March 9th, March 10th as an effective date for 0, but it appears that it's getting there a lot quicker. So yeah. My point is that while there are risks, tail risks, like you've described, and in war things can go wrong, the
enemy gets a vote.
The incredible superiority that the U.S. has shown seems to have completely changed the global chessboard very quickly. So for one, the Chinese defense systems that were used by Iran were completely overwhelmed. And number two, Saudi Arabia and other BRICS nations must be looking at Iran and realizing the dollar still reigns supreme because the U.S. still reigns supreme. What are the implications here in terms of how President Trump is reshaping this global chessboard?
It's everything. The whole board is changing. Gary, Space Force used directed energy weapons and knocked out ballistic missiles at Apogee. We have video of it. They put all the Star Wars stuff on the board. They're not lying here. And I resisted this for years. I had patrons telling me, dude, you're so wrong. We're so far ahead. It's not funny. I was in that camp of thinking that Iran and the Russians, and for years, I was willing to, play both sides of this. And I'm like, nope, no, that's clearly what's on the table now. And the reason I've been able to make that shift was last year's 12-day war. When the Russians stood down, when the Chinese stood down, when everybody stood down and left Iran by themselves, oh yeah, did they get some hits in on Israel? Great. And I'm dead serious when I say I cheered for Ty and a lot of injuries last year, and that's exactly what I got. Because what that meant was that it meant that Israel has to then really think seriously about what their future role is. The Israeli people themselves, they have a screwed up political situation in Israel as well. And because of the complications of City of London and Europe and this and that and all these other things and the Zionists and all this stuff. And everybody who talks about this stuff and uses that as their raison d'etre or their prime argument as to why X, Y, and Z and X, Y, and Z is that Donald Trump is owned by the Israelis. That's a lie. But I get why you would think that, because if you just look at history as a single vector analysis, if you just do a single vector analysis, you can come to that conclusion. But there's 100 vectors. There's 100 variables pointing in different directions here. And you've got to eventually figure out what the dot product of all of those are and what the final vector is. And the final vector is that there's a big friggin' directed energy weapon pointed from Washington at London, but some of it has to go through Iran and some of it has to go through Venezuela and Mexico and this one and that one and everywhere else. But eventually the vector dot product is, we're going after London. And because that's the key, that's the key to all of this, because it's all about money in the long run. All of the military stuff and all of the agents of chaos and axis of resistance and all of these things and all the propaganda is tied to how can we move the markets in such a way that we can then use that to reinforce the reality and blackmail everybody who may be over leveraged on one particular trade versus the other. Remember, that's ultimately where the power really lies. If I can move the price of oil up, if the structure of the oil markets is such that everybody's short because they don't think oil is going to rise to $90 a barrel, well, then what do? You create a moment where you can bankrupt all those people by moving oil to $90 a barrel, because you can read the options market, you can read the futures market, you can read the options on futures market. You own the clearinghouses and the market makers and the family offices, and you've got billions of dollars sitting in Cayman funds moving money around and lighting this shit up. This is the way it works. This is the way the world works, folks. Everybody who wants to bring up the fact that somebody made a whole lot of money shorting airline stocks on 9/10 isn't wrong. Now, apply that model everywhere to every day-to-day market movements, and you'll see it's operative all over the place. We gold and silver bugs have been making this argument for 30 years. But when I watch people only do this from a perspective of gold and silver and nothing else matters, I'm like, you don't think the oil markets matter? You don't think the currency markets matter? You don't think the bond markets matter? You don't think bond spreads are this? I mean, it's all the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. So,
all right, let me ask you this. Do you believe limiting China's access to the cheap Iranian and Venezuelan oil is definitely part of Trump's broader geopolitical strategy to counter the rare earths dominance and the holdback that China has been, doing in their negotiations?
I think that oil, cheap oil versus rare earths is a false equivalence. I think cheap, heavy sour oil for running a blue water littoral navy or literal navy on the part of the Chinese, where they can, do anything more than guarantee the shipping lanes in their part of the world, is what Trump is attempting to take care of. Okay. Is what Trump is attempting to limit here. He's already told the Chinese, you're going to get plenty of Venezuelan oil. As a matter of fact, we're going to help rebuild Venezuela's output so you get more oil on a daily basis out of Venezuela than you're getting currently. Yeah, but you just got to pay retail for it.
Now you did see today they in China, they told two of their major oil companies that no exports are now allowed, right?
Right. Yeah. It makes perfect sense.
Makes perfect sense right now, right? Yeah.
All right, and that's fine. But so Iran is the same thing. A lot of heavy sour oil in Iran used to run ships. As far as the rare earths are concerned, look, many people make this argument about American rare earths. Like, we outsourced our supply chains to these other countries on purpose. It was done as a means by which to strategically weaken us. We now have an administration that's not going to allow that. Now, as an old chemist, I can tell you it's not that tough. Okay, what you're telling me when you say that the United States can't process rare earths is you're saying the United States, the most powerful chemical producer in the world, one of the most advanced most advanced economies in the world as it comes to material science, can't produce anion exchange resins or cation exchange resins. Really? As a chemist, I know how you separate rare earths. I know generally what the process is. It's mostly just passing the dirt over very, very finely tuned cation exchange resins to pull those species, those tripositive. I'm putting my chemist receipts on the table by using the word tripositive as opposed to +3 anions, because all F block rare earths are all plus. They have one oxidation state, +3, and it's why they're hard to speciate. Right, ytterbium from samarium, from praseodymium, from this one, from that one. The reason is because their chemistries are all really, really, really similar. So you can get the odd numbered ones and you get the even numbered ones, and then from there the heavies versus the lights, and then from there, you got to speciate to get ytterbium. Yeah, that takes a little bit more work. You just want that one? Well, that's harder. You want that one? Well, that's harder. Neodymium is harder to get. You know what I mean? But we know how to do it. The fact that we're not doing it doesn't mean we don't know how to do it. It means that we just don't have a plant to do it. We can build the plant. And if you say to me, it'll take 15 years. Why? Yeah, under the Democrats, when the Democrats and the Chinese were literally writing, and Davos were literally writing regulations to keep us from building plants. Trump just nationalized the California energy markets under the Defense Production Act to stop Gavin Newsom from shutting down oil and gas production in California. You don't think he's not going to allow a rare earth processing plant to be built in, I don't know, Kentucky? What are you, out of your minds?
Let's segue from where we are right now, talking about the rare earths. Mm-hmm. The reality is that because of everything you just described, the lack of CapEx cycle, the shifting all this overseas to everybody else out of our backyard, the U.S. is very far behind and in great need of critical minerals, whether that be for military and defense, AI and robotics, the electrical grid overhaul, whatever. We have a huge need coming up, a demand stack need that we can't meet right now internally. However, that said, it's my impression that this overwhelming display of power in Iran makes the process of ensuring those supplies to be filled moving forward, that they will be with maybe a bit less friction going forward.
Yeah, bit less.
It doesn't change the effort. It doesn't change the scale. It doesn't maybe even change the length of time or even the cycle, but it likely removes some friction from the process that would have otherwise been in the way, elongating it and maybe preventing us from getting it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Gary. And I also think that, and I hate the phrase, by the way, again, chemist, I hate the phrase critical minerals when most of these things are metals. They're just metals. They're not minerals. Like I know the mineral is the oxide. Everybody knows the mineral is an oxide. I know. It just bothers me. They use the phrase. Somebody decided. I think they
We'll
should
call it
just use.
strategic metals.
That's what I like. I like you don't need to do that. I'm yelling at the Trump administration. I think critical minerals is stupid. I think strategic metals is better. I just think it's better branding. I've been calling them the strategic metals complex for years. Copper, gold, silver, aluminum, nickel, cobalt.
Yeah,
Right.
but let's stay on the idea
Yeah.
though. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but the idea is exactly correct. Like, we can get rid of the Trump administration can fast track getting these things built. We're going to have metals, critical mineral processing plants. We're building one in Tennessee. It's going to be online by the end of next year. If you don't think that we don't have a 3-year stockpile, you're nuts. Of course we do. But we don't have a 20-year stockpile, right? So we have them out there. Rare earths are not rare. They're just finally
I'm going
distributed.
beyond rare earths, so from
I know you
copper
are.
and silver and
I know.
aluminum and all of it.
All of it. And why do you think we're going? Why do you think we're trying to wipe out the cartels in Mexico? Right? Like when he went after CJNG and took out El Mencho, the same weekend, like literally that everything else was happening. Like that was a big flex. Why do you think he wants Alberta to declare independence and British Columbia? Like I'm looking at what the Canadians are doing. I'm going to be blunt and I'm going to be rude here for just a second. And I'm going to say, isn't it funny that the Canadians think they're going to be cute by handing most of Vancouver and the area around British Columbia to the native populations? And I'm like, oh, really? Well, Zoomers don't drink anymore. So Jim Beam is probably sitting on a whole lot of, this is terribly racist, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a whole lot of stock they can't sell. Hey, why don't we send it to Vancouver and just buy half of British Columbia for a couple of cases of booze? Like, this is where we are. Like, what are these people doing? When you stop the really, sometimes I do these, I make statements like that on purpose, not just to be funny, but to like, let's put brass tacks on the table. You think it would be hard for us to buy that area of British Columbia that the Crown thinks they're going to sequester away from the potential for British Columbia to secede from Canada along with Alberta, right? That's what they're worried about. That's why they're making that move. That's why they installed Mark Carney as Prime Minister in Canada, was to preempt this because they could see these moves coming because they knew exactly what Trump wanted to do, okay? You have to start reading the geopolitical game board that way. Unfortunately, we live in a world where the commentariat has prepped people to believe that everybody who's in charge is a moron. And we should stop doing that. The Russians aren't morons. Let me put it this way. For all of the bloviating and the whining that I hear from people about how potent Iran is, I've heard for years about all their weapons and all this and all that and how wicked smart they are. And Persians are very smart people. I'm not taking that away from them. And all of this stuff, do they have supernatural ability to do strategic planning? And the Russians are the masters of 27D chess, but somehow the United States isn't capable of this? That Donald Trump is just a vain moron, from Queens who doesn't know anything? That's a very, very dangerous position to take. Europe took that position. Europe has treated Trump as that guy that they say that they think he is. They've treated him that way. All we have to do is wait him out. He doesn't really know anything. He's vain and shallow, and he doesn't read. He just watches Fox News. They believe that stuff. I have that directly from people who have been in the room with the leadership of Europe, and they're like, yeah, they really do believe this. Meanwhile, he keeps running the table on them. And I didn't want to believe it at first. I wanted to say he was just yet another shitbag property developer from Queens, but I got news for you. It's a little smarter than that. Because the minute he sent Elon Musk last year, after Keir Starmer and the Pakistani rape gangs, before the inauguration, I went, oh no. I think Trump knows exactly what's going on. I was shocked by that. And it made me reassess Donald Trump and what was going to happen for this administration, like literally in 15 minutes. I was like, oh, no, this is different. This is not Trump 1.0. This is we're watching a different television show. We're not watching season 2 of the original Trump show. This is a complete reboot of the Trump show.
All right. So, Tom, sticking with the Trump administration today,
Sure.
I'm sure you saw this. They facilitated a large gold order between us and Venezuela, about 1,000 kilograms of gold to be shipped to the U.S. What's your takeaway on that? What's the connection to everything else that's happening here, and maybe even to the currency issue.
Sure. No, the Trump administration clearly wants to add to our stock of physical collateral. They also want to get the money into the hands of the sitting Venezuelan government now under Delcy Rodriguez that can start to rebuild Venezuela for Venezuelans. So, okay, we're going to pay you market price for 1,000 kilograms of gold. Like, it's a big deal. And that then puts that into our collateral stack for us to be able to use to issue gold-backed stablecoins or throw them into the vaults of GLD so that GLD can operate as a fully liquefied currency hedge for people who need to hedge their currency risk with gold, and they use GLD for that. So
do you expect that to strengthen the dollar?
I expect
all the actions that they're taking, if you take them all.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that I'm with Brent Johnson on this. I've been with Brent Johnson on this for a while now, which is that there is no real alternative to the dollar because we just saw what the American military is capable of doing with just 2/9 of our Navy, half of our Air Force. I remind everybody, said this twice this week on podcast, I'll say it again. The biggest Air Force in the world is the U.S. Air Force. The second largest Air Force in the world is the U.S. Navy. Okay. The third largest Air Force is probably Army Air Cav or whatever. I mean, like, you know what I mean? And then there's everyone else. Okay. We're that far ahead in terms of our ability to project that kind of power. Now, we're not going to get into a war with the Russians over any of this stuff because the Russians are helping us. As you pointed out earlier, Putin just told everybody that he's like on board with what Trump is doing. Yeah, he's got Lavrov out there making noises. That's Lavrov's job.
Today,
Putin then comes out. Yeah, but then Putin comes out and he says, after Trump takes over the shipping or basically announces his intention to take over shipping insurance, Putin comes out and says, by the way, we're rethinking our ever
the LNG
reopening any LNG or oil and LNG to Europe.
Yeah.
That's a Trumpian play. And so I told RT the other day, I said, the big winner here is Russia. Russia now has that much more leverage to force a conclusion onto the tracksuit midget and Zelensky, who isn't allowed to.
Well, and if China can't get their energy supply out of the, through the Strait and out of that Middle Eastern area, they're going to go over back to Putin and they're going to say, I need more. So if that's the case, I would think also India gets hurt a little bit here.
Yeah, they do. And even Modi is finally going, okay, I've got to call uncle here because clearly Modi kept trying to do the will they won't they thing. He kept trying to he kept being a guy with a foot on two islands. Right, saying, am I in with London and the Davos crowd, or I am with Trump? And keeps playing that game back and forth because he keeps thinking that India is more powerful and more important than it actually is. Because as far as Trump's concerned, nobody is more powerful, nobody is more important than the United States. And everybody, and I mean everybody, has gotten multiple signals now that no one is willing to cross the United States on these issues at all with a guy in the White House who is willing to defend America's interest.
The fact that Russia and China are nowhere to be found right now to help Iran is proof it's supporting what you're saying.
It's that and we heard this loud and clear with their silence last June. Look, Russia wants the international north-south transport corridor deconflicted. From St. Petersburg to the port of Chabahar, they want that deconflicted. They want the Caspian Sea deconflicted. They want Aleyev in Azerbaijan to stop playing both sides. They want the Iranians to stop stirring up chaos around the Middle East. They don't want to be trapped by the Black Sea anymore. And until Turkey is removed from being in charge of the gates of the Black Sea, again, Erdogan, Muslim Brotherhood, City of London. Once you process that, and it took me years to do this. Now once I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed this about Erdogan. You realize that the Russians want the international north-south transport corridor, and they want it deconflicted completely. They don't care who's in charge in Iran, as long as the people who are in charge in Iran aren't going to stir up shit around the world. It's that simple.
All
Their
right,
calculus is really, really simple from
let's
that perspective.
let's throw another hat in the ring here. 2 days ago, Italian Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni revealed that Japan is now going to be a special strategic partner. Japan has this worrying bond market right now. They could have cascading effects, but clearly the allied powers, they understand all that, and they've understood it the whole time. What's the linkage here with Japan? And I would add, what are the concerns?
Okay, so Japan is awesome, and I'm glad you brought that up. By the way, Friedrich Merz was the German Chancellor. Friedrich Merz was in the White House the other day trying to help trying to get something out of Trump. By the way, he was also making overtures to George Maloney. So now the triangle of the tripod of Italy, Germany, and France, where France and Germany have been ganging up on Italy for years and years and years. Now all of a sudden Germany is like hooking up with the Italians, and the French are on the outside looking in, because now they've lost their access to ultra cheap uranium coming out of the Sahel region of Africa, because they've lost all those things. Okay, so you're correct. Now let's talk about Japan. Maloney coming out and saying that is a further corroboration of everything I just said, which is that Maloney and Trump are aligned. Greece is aligned with Trump. Trump moved NATO assets out of Poland and out of Germany and moved it all into Greece. Greece immediately moved 2 frigates to Cyprus the other day, and British assets were leaving. Financiers, bankers, MI6, they were all like bolting out of freaking Cyprus, like they've been caught with their pants down in the room with a 14-year-old. I mean, it was bad. Like they were in the Epstein files. That's how quickly they were running away from that stuff. You saw all that happen, right? So what I've been saying for a long time is that what Trump is trying to do is to isolate Northern Europe from the rest of the energy production of the world. Close them off. They close themselves off to the Russians. Say, hey, why don't we close off the northern coast of the Mediterranean Sea, or the southern, or the coast of southern Europe? Leave them with no ports. If France had decent ports on the Mediterranean, France would not have been an aggressive power over the years. But they don't have good ports in France for the purposes that they need to run their economy. Germany is clearly landlocked in that respect. It's why they so desperately, during the Greek debt crisis of 2015, wanted complete access and control over the Greek ports and the Greek assets there. Very important. Go back to the resolution of the 2015 Greek debt crisis on that. So now you've got so that's what Trump's been trying to do. Now you've got Russia, the United States. And then you take away their ability to bring LNG and oil and gas in from the Middle East, which is why Total and British Petroleum and all them are so thoroughly interested in Iran and Iraq, by the way, and Qatar and the UAE and all that. And they're all now in Trump's orbit. That's what part of the reason with the 12-day war was all about, getting all of those Emirates and the Saudis on Trump's side of the equation. Now you've got the Middle East cut off. Now they don't have any energy that Trump doesn't approve of. So therefore, Europe is done.
What concerns do you have, if any, as it pertains to Japan and any potential cascading impacts?
Zero.
Okay.
I have zero worry about Japan for three reasons. The first is that they've made strategic, they've cut a trade deal. They've made strategic moves with the United States, right? Investment. They have a sovereigntist in charge of the LDP for the first time since World War II. What did we see after the snap elections? You tried to see everybody say, headline-wise, this is going to be bad, or Japan is going to spend too much money, and then all these terrible things are going to happen, right? They're going to spend money that they don't have. Remember, the Bank of Japan owns both the Nikkei and a whole lot of JGBs. They don't just own debt, they own equities as well. So the Bank of Japan can manage the yen, manage the yen coming out of the zero-bound interest rates, and normalize. I think they're going to normalize rates with the United States. I think we're going to see Japan move up to around 2%. I think we're going to see the United States move down to around 2% under Kevin Warsh. And the yen carry trade, which was the lubricant, which is another lubricant for the global dollar trade, Eurodollar trade the City of London controls, that's off the board.
Okay.
Okay. And that means that the bond market is going to continue to, they're going to normalize rates. The long end of the curve is going to sell off a little bit. But what did we see? We saw the yen strengthen, the Nikkei rally, and Japanese JGBs rally on Takahishi's win. Because political uncertainty trumps budgetary concerns. We have political certainty in Japan for the first time in decades. Decades.
Okay.
Of a type and kind that we've never had.
So my get. All right. Yeah. All right. So that's interesting. All
so,
right.
So we take it one step further. Takahashi will be given the ability by Trump to finally cut a peace deal with the Russians over the end of World War II, and that at that point, Japan and Russia can finally cut proper trade deals. You're going to see a pipeline go from Sakhalin to Tokyo in like no time flat. I will bet more money than I should that pipeline's already been drawn up, engineered, and is waiting to go. And all they're waiting for is that there's the conditions for that deal, that peace treaty to finally be solved. But that doesn't get solved until Russia-Ukraine ends. Russia and Ukraine have to end so that Russia can be unsanctioned. We can have a reasonable security architecture. Why do you think they won't let the tracksuit midget sign a peace deal? Okay. Among other things, there's at least 14 other reasons, but that's just one of them.
Okay. All right. So, we've spent 45 minutes here talking about global geopolitical chess movements, war, currency and bond market, war, etc. What do you see in terms of implications of all of this action on the midterm elections in November?
It's a big black hole between now and June, which is Trump's deadline for ending the war in Ukraine. I don't have a good answer for you, and I'm not coming down in terms of energy, because until we break the deadlock in the Senate, and you can see that the chess pieces are being moved around the board, and everybody's like, you got John Cornyn out there and basically trying to blackmail the president into, saving his Senate seat so we can get the SAVE Act passed. And I'm with my friend Colonel Connor Watkins, like, no senator blackmails the president. No, Cornyn, you don't get anything. Thune, you don't get shit. What they're doing in the Senate, and this is a very City of London play, what they're doing in the Senate over all of this is to force Trump to declare a military state of emergency in the United States and take control of the elections in the fall so that they can run their Trump's a tyrant nonsense. There is no reason other than that to not do what they want to do. If what Trump wants them to do and what the American people want them to do, they're not doing it because they're traitors. There's no other word for it. We need to understand that that's what we're dealing with. We have a non-functional legislature, and we have a mostly non-functional judiciary that leaves the executive branch to do what's necessary. City of London is trying to maneuver Trump into his Lincoln moment. What they are betting on is that somehow they can then get their pet blue state governors to go, this is beyond the pale, and they all declare independence, and Trump just puts them down. And this is when the most important word in the English language, and this is important. The most important word in the English language at that point becomes sheriff. Because in every state in the United States, and this is for your international audience as well, they don't understand how this works. In every state, the order of power goes from the governor to the lieutenant governor to the county sheriffs. Bypassing the legislatures, bypassing the Senate, none of that matters. The judiciary, none of it. These are constitutional officers. They can deputize whoever they want. And we've got 2 million GWAT veterans in this country ready and waiting. They're just waiting for the signal to be deputized and do whatever is necessary to defend these people defend our country against these traitors. And you have to understand that that's where the mindset is. It's everywhere. It's all over this country. And that's a big deal. because that's ultimately when these guys in Washington have to look up and go, now what? Again, why is John Thune doing this? Why is he negotiating against his best interest? Because he's got somebody else standing behind him saying, you can't with a gun. Same thing with the mullahs, same thing with everybody else. Same thing over and over again. So Trump has to figure out a way to break that deadlock. And if he breaks those deadlocks between now and June, the midterms will be a cakewalk.
So what I'm going to need to do is get you back over the summer where we could, maybe there'll be some more certainty over the events that have taken place between now and then. And
these are the signposts that you should be looking for.
Yeah.
Because the one last thing, Gary, real quick. I know we want to get out soon. But these are important little bits and pieces to this. This is what Trump is strategizing for right now. This is why he's reshuffling the cabinet a little bit. This is why Christine Noem is out. This is why Mark Wayne Mullen is being brought in DHS, because we need that kind of energy at DHS. There's a lot coming. Barack Obama lawyered up the other day. You don't think something's not coming?
Yeah, I mean, things have been coming for a while. So things are building and likely to a crescendo, right? Well, let me ask you this.
Sure.
With things coming and things coming to a tipping point, Tom, there's been a lot of worry over the general stock market recently. They've been shaky. They've been volatile. There's lofty valuations. There's worry over AI cannibalizing software as a service. There's worry over AI taking jobs. There's incredibly weak housing markets. There's debt issues. There's supply chain issues. There's war and geopolitical. I mean, it just goes on.
Commercial real estate, private equity, private credit.
Right. We can just pile on. So there's
dogs and cats living together. Yeah.
Are you expecting a stock market implosion, a draft down, if you will, coming sometime soon in 2026?
Could we be looking at another tariff tantrum style, 20% drop in the Dow? Sure. Well, I'm not telling you whether it's going to be or not be. I don't know. Right? No one knows. Not even Martin Armstrong's computer knows. I love Marty to death. I love Marty to death. So I love Marty, and he and I are on different sides of this in many ways. And we're going to be at Sean Newman's Cornerstone Forum at the end of the month up in Calgary. It's going to be great. We're going to have a great time.
It's just funny that you use this platform to take a dig at him.
No, I'm not taking the dig at him. I'm really not. I love Marty, and I don't think he's wrong. I don't like it's not a dig. It's not. I say it with respect. Are you kidding me? Like, no, man.
All right.
So my point is that we don't really know, but you should of course plan for it. Like, if you're directional in markets and markets this volatile and times this volatile, you're an idiot. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what your politics or anything else. Don't be. This is not time to be a hero. Do you take some bets? Do you take some spec bet risks? Sure. Do you see money go in the ground? Sure. You can see all of it all at once. And if I'm right that we're targeting London, do you think London's not going to take a shot at our freaking equity markets? Is that air you think you're breathing? They did it during the tariff tantrum. They went after our bond markets. They attacked the SOFR strip so egregiously. The SOFR strip, the SOFR futures market from 3 months out to 3 years, which 6 months out to 3 years, which I look at twice a week, every week. I check the SOFR futures curve all the time, and I'm telling you, they're going to try and do it, but they're running out of vectors by which to attack our markets because our markets keep coming up functional every time. SOFR has changed the game board. Their old ways of bombing the short-term, bombing either the CDS spreads or this one or that one. All those things are going away. There are real risks. There are real problems within the U.S. economy that need to be worked out. We were just talking before we got started today about what's happening with kind of like 2 to 3 star hotels all over the United States and that real estate. That stuff's all selling at getting fire saled all over the country at 25, 30% of their build costs. There's all sorts of things happening and they're going to get liquidated. BlackRock just wrote down another fund this morning. It wasn't a big fund, but it was a fund.
Yeah, we talked
18,
about
$20 million.
We talked about
Yeah.
reversion to the mean is going to be happening all over the place. Look,
but the bigger picture, and not just for that. So should you be worried about that? Yes. Could there be a big sell-off on our bond markets? Of course. The question is not what happens during the spasm. The question is what happens after the spasm is over. But during the spasm, everybody is going to light their hair on fire. Now, thankfully, I don't have any hair left, so I can't light my hair on fire. But they're going to light their hair on fire. They're going to call me an idiot. They're going to say this. They're going to say, I'm telling you, I expect these things to happen. If they don't happen,
you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Everybody will be pleasant. No, worse is that's a data point. Oh, look, our markets were more resilient than we thought they would be. Yeah. And everybody else will be terribly disappointed because they were wrong. And then they're going to kind of try and manufacture how they were right. And you're going to watch that left, right, and center. What I'm telling you right now is take everybody's analysis with a large amount of salt. I don't have to. There used to be like a pound of salt, like right here on my table.
I get what you're saying, and I think everybody else will too. All right, so gold has moved up, 150% or so since breaking out over 2,000 in March of 24. It's often viewed as a thermometer of the global financial situation. What's gold telling us, and is it your expectation that gold's going to continue to march higher, either continually or after the spasm you talked about?
There's going to be, if there's a spasm because everybody goes to ground, everybody's going to go to the dollar. The euro is rolling over. Oil prices are up. Europe is now dealing with that problem. There's going to be, this is the recipe for sovereign debt crisis in Europe. Are people going to get hurt? Yes, they're going to get hurt. The question is, this is a big one. This ties into gold. The question then, when money starts going to ground like that, how coupled are the American economy to the implosion of the sovereign debt markets in Europe? That's the question you should be asking yourself. Then the other question is anybody going to allow that sovereign debt crisis to emerge, or we just going to manage the decline of it? At some point, is there going to be a negotiated settlement between the United States and Europe over this? We don't know. These are all possibilities. So be smart, shop S-Smart, get 25% to cash, and wait it out. If there's a spasm, you buy the bottom, and you look like a genius. If there isn't a spasm, you slept well for 4 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's good advice.
And then as far as gold is concerned, gold needs to go to 15 or gold, silver, and Bitcoin need to go to multiples of where they are long term. I'm now talking 4 to 7 year time horizon, long term, to balance the books of the current asset valuations. Trump wants to hold valuations mostly where they are and allow earnings to catch up. The stock market, let's talk about the stock market being overvalued. Something I argue with my good friend Dave Collum about all the time. And yes, we argue, but we are good friends, and it's real, and it's healthy, and it's good that good friends argue in public. Dave is firmly convinced that we need a 50% haircut in equity prices because the Schiller PDE is trading, I don't know, 38, 40 or whatever, some nosebleed territory. Such that bald eagles I've got nosebleeds. They're so friggin' high. Valuations are so high. Fine. But here's the thing. Interesting part about PDE. Two things about the Schiller PDE. One, it's inflation adjusted earnings over the course of the average over the last 10 years. If inflation comes down, then the inflation adjusted PDE is also going to come down just as a function of inflation coming down. That's one. Not saying we're going to have low inflation going for the next 5 to 7 years. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if we have that, because Trump has changed the game board with tariffs and American system productivity versus British free trade model and all that stuff that my friends at Promethean Action like to talk about, and Matt Arrett and those guys, if they're right, Trump takes that down, we'll just watch the Schiller PDE come down from the 40s into the 20s naturally as a function of lower inflation. That's point number one. Point number two is that it's a price to earnings ratio. So in any ratio, everybody focuses on price because it's the numerator, but everybody forgets about the earnings on the bottom end, which is that the earnings ratio of the productive part of the economy, the Dow Jones Industrials, the Dow Jones Transports, the Russell 2K, the bottom half of the S&P 493 that isn't the T-fangs, right? earnings can go up there and price can go sideways. And the PDEs then, of course, also attenuate. As earnings go up, we say we don't want to pay 45 times earnings for, I don't know, pick a Dow stock that should be traded, IBM, trading at 45 or 50 times earnings, whatever the hell it's trading at. We want to see it back down towards 20. Well, we don't bid IBM up another 150% from what it is. But if the hot money flow keeps coming into the United States because of capital outflow from Europe and emerging markets, which have done very well, mind you, DAX is trading, DAX and the Eurostoxx 50 trading well above. They just broke out to all-time highs. Emerging markets outperformed everything last year. Financials outperformed a lot of things last year. Japan, the Nikkei was 60 grand, right? Those are all markets that they're trading in nosebleed territory. If that money flows back into the U.S. as money goes to ground, you're going to watch the Dow could rise to 55,000 or 60,000 because it's a hell of a lot of money to move the Dow compared to moving like the German DAX, for example, or the Eurostoxx 50. Right? That amount of money could move the Dow up 20%. Earnings could improve by 40%. Inflation could stay low between 1% and 2%. All of a sudden, the silver PDE crests to come down to the mid-20s. All of those competing factors, capital inflows, improving earnings, and an unwillingness to pay a massive, ridiculous Eurodollar pumped premium on equity assets because the money had nowhere else to go, all that comes off the market. And the Dow just kind of glides higher. But it doesn't go to 100 grand. It goes to 60 grand over 2 years. Okay. But it's trading at it's trading at an 18 multiple.
Okay.
And not a 35 multiple.
So
that's my argument. I think that's what Trump is. I think that's what Trump and Dissent are trying to do.
Okay. All right. So let's shift real quick. We're starting to get really long on time here.
Sure.
Based on all the recent geopolitical actions, the move in gold, the concern over U.S. debt and markets, what do you expect the impact on the need for buyers of increased U.S. debt to be? And what actions do you expect the Fed, led by the new chair, presumably Kevin Warsh, to take in 2026?
I think Warsh is going to cut rates down into the 2% range because I think Powell has outlived his usefulness as the guy who had needed to tighten the Eurodollar markets, which he did brilliantly, even though Trump hates him for it, but he did it brilliantly. I would like Powell, the bond market is screaming that Powell needs to cut 25, if not 50 basis points this month, right now. Like you can look at the yield curve. Like if he were to cut 25, 50 basis points, markets wouldn't just rejoice. The bond markets would make the yield curve would make so much more sense. The foreign central banks are the ones playing in the 10 and 30s. It's everybody else playing in the 2 years and shorter, right? So foreign central banks could dump a lot of U.S. treasuries because Europe has bought almost $2 trillion worth of treasuries over the last 4 years.
But Trump was out there, at Davos saying you better not sell.
Oh yeah, of course. But he doesn't need to worry about that. They need the U.S. dollar. They need the U.S. 10-year to not rise to 6% because then what happens to the German Bund? It goes to 5 and implodes all the European banks. The European pension funds. They blow up. Everything blows up. They can't. So they've been almost forced by Powell to continue to subsidize the U.S. Treasury market. They have been selling on the long end. I watched the way I have a sixth sense for this. So I watched the TIC report. I watched the way they move bond spreads on a daily basis. And what I'll tell you is that eventually that game of extend and pretend is going to fail. And they will have to sell. Trump will not be happy with them if they do, but they're going to have to. But the question is how they sell. If they sell indiscriminately, like if that slovenly prick Andrew Bailey at the Bank of England decides to try and dump $500 billion worth of treasuries on the market in a week, Trump will literally move guys in to 10 Downing Street on Monday. If you don't think that Keir Starmer hasn't gotten that phone call, I give you I give you the fight over Diego Garcia. I'm dead serious when I say this. Okay, like the C-17s and the snake eaters that showed up in Venezuela, they've been told, we will come for 10 Downing Street if we have to. Okay. This is not your daddy's United States, folks. We're not playing by Queensberry rules anymore. And we are back to the return of power politics, not consensus politics. I'll go back to something I said 2 years ago.
Are you expecting the Fed and Warsh to have to print at some point in 26?
I believe that if there's a sovereign debt crisis in Europe, the Fed is going to have to intervene in our banking system. And they do it every once in a while. They did it the other day.
Is that a high likelihood this year, you think?
That they start going back to like a little bit of QE or whatever, and maybe expand the balance sheet? It's possible. Yeah. I'm not going to be averse to that. I mean, I am averse to it like philosophically, but if I'm Warsh in this moment in time, given the strategic elements of everything I put out here, if I'm Warsh, I'm doing QE.
I guess what I'm asking,
and all that does is that just puts the top end price of gold at the end of this much higher than it was before. If the Fed has to expand the balance sheet to back to $7.5, $8 trillion, well, then gold has to go to $15,000 or $18,000 as opposed to $12,000 or $10,000 or $12,000. It all depends on whether or not Davos finally capitulates.
So you don't believe the necessarily the narrative put out about Warsh that he's a complete hawk. There's not going to be any rate cuts. There's going to be no spending. We're gonna diminish the balance sheet. You know what I mean? The thesis that the narrative they've been putting out. You don't necessarily buy.
I think he's going to cut rates because we're way above the neutral rate at this point because tariffs have been very, very effective and the trade deals have been very effective. And look. Again, I've been one of Jerome Powell's best defenders for years. But at the same time, that was during the time when the Biden administration was trying to destroy the country, trying to destroy our capital markets. And he did his job, which was negotiate, to navigate the substitution of LIBOR to SOFR and handle that transition. That transition is over. SOFR now dominates global dollar markets. No argument, right? So therefore, the United States doesn't necessarily need, especially with the kind of inflation that we're seeing currently. Do we need 4% or 3.5% on the Fed funds rate? No, we actually need to shore up those regional banks and those smaller banks and those credit unions that took big punches in the mouth during the higher for longer period in order to shore up their balance sheets and begin the process of doing domestic credit stimulus or whatever you want to call it, to start the virtuous cycle of igniting domestic credit. While at the same time, is it going to help some of the private equity guys that are over leveraged? Yeah. Is it going to help the private loan industry? Yes, it will. Again, at the end of the day, you're not going to get out of this clean. There are no good guys and bad guys here, okay? Like, everything Trump has done with Iran has been good for America. Got news for you. It's also good for Israel. And that leaves a bad taste in my mouth because I don't want to see the Israelis, get out clean here for what they did in Gaza at all. But what am I going to do? Like, Trump is willing to make the deals necessary to get to the better place. And that if that means either flipping bad guys, which he has done with Maduro and tried to do with Khamenei and failed, and been trying to flip Zelensky and can't, then if those become intractable nodes, then you have to shift to something else. So he's trying to shift the intractable nodes in the Senate. He hasn't been able to do that yet, but he keeps putting more pressure on them, and at some point they're going to crack. And so watch these things this way. Note, how is he putting pressure on Europe? Scott Bessent just went after Ember in Zurich, one of the subsidiaries of Julius Baer. Big tell. Went after a big bank in Luxembourg. Forced MFS in the mortgage company in Europe, in the city of London. That's in trouble. BlackRock's in trouble. This one's in trouble. That one's in trouble. All those people now get to come to Bessent, to Trump, and go, we need help. We need help. And if the old system of we're going to give you a bailout isn't there, I think Kevin Warsh is going to do everything he's said he's going to do, which is finish what Powell started, getting rid of the Fed put under the markets. Move the Fed back to a domestic credit focused institution to bail out and to not bail out, but to help as the lender of last resort for the domestic paper market while preserving, again, everything I said 2 years ago, and preserving the par value of the offshore dollar. And we have an onshore dollar that trades at a discount to the offshore dollar. If you want dollars overseas, you're going to pay a premium for them, but Americans are going to get them at a better rate. And that is what's going to drive everything I just said about the equity markets towards that eventual conclusion. Again, is this going to happen without volatility? No. Why? The enemy gets a vote. That's why. So watch it play itself out and try not to be a response engine in the moment. Understand as much of what I just told you as you can. And don't get me wrong, folks. If you don't get this, I get it. It took me 20 years to figure this shit out. And I dedicated my life to it. So I'm doing my very best to try and give it to you in digestible chunks with receipts in terms of the way the geopolitics works, to then put it all together and go, oh, actually, we are in not safe hands, but the safest hands we can ask for, given the situation. And are we going to get our hair mussed? Yes. Is it going to be hard? Yes. Don't think, I never thought that Trump wasn't going to, after last June, I'm like, Trump's going to attack Iran unless they capitulate. They're not capitulating, fine.
Well, this has been an incredible discussion with Tom Luongo. Before we wrap up, I want to direct everyone who's interested in the metals and mining sector to dive into our Substack at metalsandminers.substack.com. When you join the quickly growing community, you're going to receive a free report. It's titled, "If You Don't Own Gold, You Know Neither History Nor Economics." That's a famous quote by investing legend Ray Dalio, and that's the name of the report you'll receive. Now, I'm positive that you've been enjoying this riveting conversation that Tom and I have been having. Please let them know. Hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment below the video. All right, Tom, we're going to wrap up here in our discussion, but would you share a key takeaway that you want to leave with the viewers, and then let everybody know where they can learn all about your work and how they can connect with you?
Sure. The big one here, folks, is that none of these countries are monoliths. That monolithic reductionist thinking will get you killed in the markets. Ooh, this is dollar bad. This is dollar good. This is, all this. Get away from that. Iran is not a monolith. The United States is not a monolith. Switzerland is not a monolith. The UK is not a monolith. All these countries, all these places, all of these things, they all have multiple factions competing for control. And as the game board shifts, and as people put pressure in one area of the board, alliances and/or interests shift as well. And that's the hardest part for people to keep up with. And that's the confusing part. Now, some of us love this stuff it's like oxygen. I can't get up in the morning and not watch the great game play itself out. That's why I do what I do. That's what I consider my primary role in this, is to try and navigate all this stuff, see all the little bits and pieces, do the Bayesian statistics, come up with the Venn diagrams, and then lay out the vector dot product, as I put it earlier. That's where we're headed. That doesn't mean that getting there is going to be easy. That's what we do with Gold, Goats, and Guns. That's what Dexter White and I both do every month in the newsletter. Patreon.com/Gold, Goats, and Guns. You can follow me on Twitter, where I try not to be a dick every day, but it just comes so naturally that I can't help myself. TFL 1728 is where I get down and dirty and throw haymakers and come in from the top rope on a regular basis. So it's fun, and
I'm picturing
we
Jimmy
do the
Superfly Snuka over here.
Exactly. Somebody the other day put that image in my head. I'm like, oh my God, I'm using that everywhere I can now. Coming in for the top rope.
Awesome.
It's like so.
Well,
funny.
I'll have all your information up on the screen, obviously, but I'll also have it in the description area, so everybody can just click through and get over to you. Tom, always so much fun, so riveting, and so exciting to have these conversations. So thanks for coming on to Metals and Miners. Always look forward to it. I look forward to having you back on sometime soon. And everybody else who's paying attention, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
I want to direct everyone who's interested in the metals and mining sector to dive into our Substack at metalsandminers.substack.com. When you join the quickly growing community, you're going to receive a free report. It's titled, "If You Don't Own Gold, You Know Neither History Nor Economics." That's a famous quote by investing legend Ray Dalio, and that's the name of the report you'll receive.